Rinald's. Is that
Hello,
how you say it?
Rinyald. Yeah, can you hear me?
Rinald's notebook or notepad or
Yes,
something?
yes. Notebook. Yeah. Wow.
Notebook. How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I don't want to waste your time. I'm not like a strict disagreeer. I just have a handful of questions because I'm not
Yeah.
super. I've found myself kind of um sympathetic to not all because a lot of it's fucking crazy, but some of the need for like reinforcement. So I just have a couple questions if it's okay. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for more conservatives,
Absolutely.
then okay, okay.
No, ask questions.
So the code that they cited in order to basically go over Newsom's head and deploy the National Guard, it was like U.S. code. What was it?
It is 10 USC 12406.
Yes, thank you. Um, but my question is, I'm trying to think of the best way to ask it. Basically is like, is the Insurrection Act the only way that Trump would be able to go over Newsom's head, or is there any situation where this U.S. code doesn't require explicit governor approval? Because it seems like the language is kind of vague, and I don't know if like that. I don't know if it's explicitly interpreted to say that you need the government's approval or the governor's
So
approval.
I think there are probably some inherent executive authorities to deploy military
Mm-hmm.
in certain circumstances. But because the Constitution delegates to Congress the ability to call forth the militias and to like organize aspects of the military, and to, for example, fund the military, I think that when Congress puts limitations on when the military can be used domestically, that those have the force of law. And so, I can think of a situation in which the governors have all been killed, or maybe there's some inherent residual, or like let's say that there's like hypotheticals for everything where there's some
Mm-hmm.
residual Article 2 authorities. But in these circumstances, when Congress has set out when and how, right, with the Posse Comitatus Act, when it's legal to use the military and when it's not, I think that the president is bound by those determinations. And so, generally, yes, unless I'm missing some other authority, I think to validly use the military as against to enforce federal law, you need to invoke some kind of congressional statute since Congress set out the framework. And right now, that the one that would apply here is the Insurrection Act. And so, absent that, I don't see how you can get around the governors.
Okay. So the main question, or the main reason why it was a big question in my mind, is because I didn't know if this was basically the act that set forth that the governor is in charge of the National Guard, or if this is like
So the
because it.
National Guard, there's other authorities that just give and explain the dual role
Mhm.
of the National Guard and that describe when and how, under what command they are, and differentiate that. So this is not the only statute. This is like one statute about when the president may do something, but there are other parts of the U.S. Code that specify who controls the National Guard. The National Guard is like the equivalent of the militia in the modern
Right,
context.
yeah. I think the language is just confusing to me because it feels like it's if the National Guard if the National Guard already lies in the governor, I don't know why they would re-clarify through this act that it lays in the governor even if the
So
president
this is
wants it
different,
to.
right? This is federal. This is calling into service, um, into federal service, right? Maybe it may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state. May call into federal service. Oh, I'm sorry. I was wrong when I said I read this wrong when I said that this includes the Marines. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state. So I was wrong when I said that includes. That's another reason why this is illegal because they're including the Marines and
Right,
they
yeah.
haven't invoked something to do that. So the president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state. So it's specifying that they'll be under federal service and the president will be able to command them, right? So the president, when you call into federal service, what's different than the National Guard is that the president is in charge, as opposed to when the National Guard is under state
Okay.
service. Okay,
Okay.
so the president is now in charge. He's calling into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers. So it's specifically. Did you ever play Mass Effect 2?
No.
It's a game. Okay, so there's a part in it where it's like a hive mind, and they're like
Mhm.
assuming direct control. The president is assuming control of the National Guards, right? So it is federal service. So you need to have this law because it specifies it. But the law says that the president orders go through the governor. So
Gotcha.
even though they're in federal service, the governor is taking charge to like enforce the laws. It's basically setting up a command structure
Yeah,
where the president is ahead on top of the governors, but and so they are commanding for federal purposes, but the governors are still involved.
it still has to run through the governors. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that
Exactly.
makes a lot. So it's more so like who commands them, not so much like who deploys them. If that kind of
So yeah, it's about who gives the orders to the people. Is
gotcha.
it the president gives the orders, but the orders go through the governors,
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
and that particularly matters because it establishes that there's still a level of control for the states. That this is not a situation. So, and that part is there to like to signify that the states still have some say. And just because the president's ordering through the governors, it's saying that like other members of the president's cabinet don't, or the military, his direct chain of command, don't get to supplant what the governor does. It's but in between the governor is the president, and that's it.
This is why I need a lawyer. Too.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing is in regard to the Insurrection Act, because I think there are reports that he is going to sign it. Um
Yeah.
is that the kind of thing where like so like for instance with the alien enemies thing, it's kind of established that like whenever he declares a war or whatever, I don't know if it's established that the predatory incursion counts as this too, but whenever he declares a war, that's kind of not reviewable. um does the declaration of an insurrection under the Insurrection Act, like, is that kind of a similar thing?
We don't know that, and we don't know that about the Alien Enemies Act. There's been basically there's one court that says that you can't that it's like you can't question whether or not it's a insurrection, but other courts have said you can look to it. There are some courts that have said that you have to you have to like take all the facts as given by the president, but you can determine whether it fits the statutory definition. The Supreme Court has told us that it's up to the lower courts to determine whether the preconditions for the Alien Enemies Act are in place,
Mhm.
but they have not told us how much deference we give to the presidential findings in that regard. So the answer is we don't know.
Okay. Okay, because I'm trying to
I,
find
I imagine there's going to be some deference. I imagine there'll be some deference to the president,
yeah,
and this court will probably give some deference.
I'm sure
I don't know if it'll
I've
be maximal deference, but it's probably some.
yeah, I've talked to someone. It feels like right now with like the faith that the Trump administration is having with declarations of national emergency. Like I don't know if he declares the Insurrection Act, if we're just like if we're just fucked, or if there's like
No,
some sort of
yeah,
check that exists on the Insurrection Act.
yeah. That's why I think it's this whole unitary executive thing is fucked. That's why I've been arguing this entire time that the courts need to be able to step in to review some of these determinations based on their good faith and bad faith. Maybe they should have some deference to the president, but I don't think it should be complete deference.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think that it is a constitutional crisis. I've been arguing that we're in a crisis since basically the start of his administration. And so, yeah, it's a pretty fucked situation, and no one knows what's going to happen.
Okay, good. Well, it's really great. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So you said that you support the aim of the protest. I think I generally agree. But
Yep.
I'm just wondering, like, when it comes to the extent, I agree with the aims that like a lot of the deportations have been super, um, like super immoral, robbing of rights, et cetera, et cetera. I agree on all of that.
Yeah.
But do you think that like it's because it feels like the protests at their core are meant to obstruct ICE operations necessarily. Um, so so
Some are.
so do you think that that's justifiable?
If they're using force or intimidation, or if they're doing crimes, I don't think it's justified. If by obstruct or interfere with federal immigration law, you just mean making it politically unpalatable or making it tougher by being inconvenient, but doing legally protected things, I am in favor of that. I do want to stop them from doing that, from enforcing the law the way they want to, but I am in favor of people stopping them through legal means, not illegal means. So, to the extent that this is First Amendment expression protected activities, it's not going to be cabined under any kind of insurrection definition,
Mhm.
and I'm going to support it. So I do support obstructing enforcement, but only in legal ways and not in illegal ways. And I take First Amendment speech and regular, protests outside of things. I'm sure that it might have an effect of deterring enforcement of immigration law, but it's legal to do that.
Hmm.
Taking specific other actions that aren't protected speech to obstruct, such as like tackling a person or fucking I don't know,
Yeah, like
obstructing them as they're trying to get to their person, right? That in terms
mhm.
of physical obstructions, that I would not say is justified.
Okay. Um. Okay. Yeah, that's most of I
Yep.
think I had a feeling we would disagree a little more, but I mean, I appreciate your content a lot. It was great
I
talking.
try to be reasonable.
Yeah,
No, no,
I
thank you,
appreciate you.
thank you for what you do. I think I've seen some of your appearances some places. I don't remember
We
exactly what
were
that
on
was,
the
but
one we were on the one
oh,
Raging
that must
Tomato
have been it.
panel together.
Yeah,
Uh,
but yeah, great job, and thank you so much for calling in.
yeah, thank you.
All right, later, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, later, bro.
We love Pisco. Thank
Okay.
God.